All right, so we're going to start off. The first shot that we're going to use is called Fantasyland by Urban Chestnut. It's going to be in this tapered glass, as we talked about. I want to go ahead and now get some of that beer in here because I want to see what those lights are really doing. I actually like to see how my lights are hitting a clear glass. I want to see the shape of it. It really helps me define that shape before I get the beer in there, and then we can really kind of craft it from there. So we're going to start off. We've got our beer cart. I always have a towel because I want to keep this nice and clean if I can. And again, you're going to have to be pretty gentle when you're doing this. Okay, the first pours are always going to be full of foam. And actually what I will often do is spoon out a lot of that. I don't necessarily want to run my beer pump really dry. The foam just isn't enough to really kind of pull through the pump effectively, and that can actually kind of burn out the pump. So it's not a bad idea to just gently take out a bunch of the foam and then add more beer. It's a process. You've got to take your time with this. So this beer has a lot more red in it than I initially thought. It's a medium-bodied tone. My impression was that it was going to be a little bit more light tone, but it's really got a nice kind of amber quality to it. I think it's going to be a pretty shot. All right, Tomas, go ahead and pop one. This is way too much beer, or way too much head, absolutely, but I want to start to see what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I think we need to put the background closer to the...
You see that? Wait.
So you don't have this...
We're getting too much of a line. So very first thing that we're seeing, the background is actually really far away. Remember, I wanted to start with it back a little bit so that I don't pick up the texture. It's actually too far. If you look on the left side, there's a big chunk of black that's coming through the glass. This glass having that kind of rounded body is really showing what's going on in the studio. So I'm going to have to bring this significantly closer in order to fill in that black. I've also got a little too much black on the right. It's actually kind of a nice gradient, but you can see now that we've added the beer, the exposure is also completely changed. It's very different from when we just had a clean glass in there. That's probably good. So my set is getting tighter, right? I'm going to have to be very conscious where I place myself, how I move about, because this is now coming in really closely. I don't have as much room. One of the things that's nice about this being so flexible and loose, I can kind of move it a little bit and I'm not going to knock it over. That's actually an advantage to having just a sheet of some sort of diffusion hanging and that's able to move. If you bump it, it's going to give a little and not necessarily topple over.
Okay. Can I shoot it?
No, not yet. I'm going to add more beer. Not the head's died. All right. I think we're going to need to bring that backlight in as well. All right, so a couple of things. My background is definitely too dark. I don't have enough light coming through there. And you can see that highlight on the front is hideous. That's one of those highlights I absolutely hate. This is the type of thing I see people make that mistake all the time. We're gonna work on this. We're gonna bring it lower and we're gonna feather it so we just get a nice kind of little line coming around from the side and hopefully still giving enough light onto the actual logo itself, because that's what we have to highlight. I'm just gonna bring this guy in.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm gonna put this one down.
So there are a couple of things that I'm gonna be doing with that background. One, I'm bringing it a lot closer. I want a little bit tighter glow, and I want it to come from a little bit more from the side. I don't want it so dead center. I want to give that a little bit more vibrance. Oh, you're going to change that out now? Yeah. Okay. We're going to change out that light. We want to bring it a little bit lower. That highlight, if we look at this, Couple of things. I hate how wide that highlight is. I hate how incredibly sharp and clear it is. That's going to happen though on a glass that is completely undressed. There's no condensation on it. It's just plain glass. It's going to have that really sharp quality. So I'm going to want to feather that a little bit, and I want to bring it a little bit lower. Remember, this glass is really bulbous, right? It's very rounded. So right now, its position, it's not catching anything under the curve of that kind of hip. So I'm going to drop my light lower so I can get it to show up. You could go, yeah.
Oh, I'm trapped. Too many.
Sets do get tight. You got to be really careful of your cords and where all your equipment is. It definitely gets tight in there. All right, that's getting better. So let's take a look at those last two shots, and you can see a huge difference in the highlight that's coming on the left side. The first shot, the light was much higher, and it wasn't getting down below kind of the rounded base of that glass where it's really rounded out. We had no highlight down there. So we've brought this light a little bit lower, and now we're starting to get the curve. That's really starting to help define the glass, and I want that. Now, this glass is so curved, it's going all the way underneath. We're never going to get that highlight to completely go under there unless we bring it insanely close, and then the highlight's going to get really fat and really ugly, and I don't want that. We are going to play with it, and I'm actually going to show you a couple versions where it is really terrible like that. Actually, let's do that. Should we bring it in, just kind of show how terrible it can be, how wide and terrible it is? So if I bring that light in like that, go ahead and pop it. You can see a couple of things that are happening. The highlight is now starting to get further down the bottom, but it's coming right into the logo, and it's gone from being this narrow to being this wide. It's a much fatter highlight, and it destroys the front of it. But we can make some quick changes with this. Let's go ahead and feather this, and we're going to start to really see a change in the shape. Go ahead and pop it there. And go ahead and pop it there. You see how the difference in that highlight? It's gone from being really fat, kind of medium, to being much more narrow. I really prefer that narrow highlight, but it's in the wrong position because it's cutting right through our label. So let's go ahead and let's bring it back around the side so we can put it in more of a position that we like. Go ahead and pop that one, see if that gets it out. It's gotten fatter again. All right.
Yeah. No, you need to go.
Hang on, my beer cart's in the way. All right, I still have to create a space for me to get in. How about that?
Yeah, it's more than my way, more.
Good.
Yeah. You still don't have it on the bottom part, but you won't have.
We're never going to get it on. We're never going to get that highlight all the way down on the bottom part of that because it's completely rounded and goes underneath. Unless we had a light that was curving and going all the way under there, that highlight's never going to show up. That's okay. I just want to get that highlight to come down a little bit and start to define that. If the client really needed a highlight to carry all the way down there, we could build it in post. Not the preferred way, but I think this is going to start to look better. Let's go ahead and pop it. Much nicer highlight. I'm liking that. So now let's address a couple other issues. You can see the beer head, which is almost minimal now, is still really dark. It's very, very gray. We're actually going to make a real beer head, but what's there is really dark and gray. And the logo is starting to die. So I need to adjust my top light. I'm going to bring that forward and down a little bit to get some light on this front. All right, let's go ahead and pop that.
Do you need more power?
Let's see what that does first. Not enough. Let's get some more power. You want to do it from there?
Yeah. How much? One stop?
Stop and a third, please. So we're using the Broncolor app that allows us to wirelessly control the lights, which is nice. This is in a position where I could actually reach up and grab it. If you have the opportunity to control your power packs wirelessly, it's nice because then you don't have to walk into the set Because remember, this is all kind of delicate. The more I'm around my set, my glass, the more opportunity I have to knock something over. So I just want to be very, very conscious about it. All right, you ready? Actually, that's not bad. So if we go back and forth between those two images, just that little bit of foam, that little bit of head that's forming, you can see a huge difference. The first one's really gray and really dead, and now it's got some life to it. You think we need more?
Maybe.
No, that's actually not bad. Let's put a third of a stop into it.
I'd rather do
All right. You know what I need? I need chopsticks.
Gonna pop it again, okay?
Say again?
Put like half a stop instead of 3, just because.
Ooh, that's nice. I like what's going on down here. This is starting to get good.
Yeah, the gradient's nice.
Yeah. I am losing that edge, aren't I?
Yes, you are, Rob.
Well, let's see if the polarizer will have a better effect there. And if not, we'll have to introduce a couple black cards. The question is, can I even see it? All right, let's hit that. All right, much better, right?
You got it back. But you lost the...
That's okay, we'll intensify it. I don't mind where it's going. So if we look at those two images, initially I had my polarizer set where I was trying to pick up some of the highlight that was coming off of the base. But I was losing the edges. They were starting to get really white, they weren't defined, they go from white to gray to beer color. That's not acceptable to me. So I rotated my polarizer and I shifted it so that the plane, instead of cutting the bottom, was now cutting the sides. Remember, when you turn that polarizer, you're selecting which plane you're cutting through. So I now want to kind of cut on the sides. It's really given definition to that side. What it's also done, it's really brought down this highlight dramatically. There's no polarizer on the front of that. It's just a pure box, but it's completely dropped out that highlight. It's cut it down by probably 2/3, right?
More.
Yeah, more. So I think I'm gonna put another stop into it. You doing it? I'll do it. Look at that. Go ahead and pop that one. Even more.
Yeah, but it's going to start to wash the label.
Yeah. Well, you know what we can do. I honestly feel like this highlight is still too far forward. So let's move it around back.
Yep.
That means that we're going to have to reposition the beer cart, which is fine because I've now made a spot that's a little too tight. So we're going to drag this guy back around and we'll pull the beer cart forward.
Do you want to actually move it here?
I'm going to pull the beer cart in here. Right? And we're going to get this guy. First, let's get this guy positioned a little bit better. Let's pop that. Yeah, we could go with black cards. Now, because this is so curved, we're never going to get it in one shot.
Yeah. No.
You know? So here's what Tomas and I are talking about. This is really probably the most difficult glass we could have possibly started with because of the shape. And that's okay, because I like showing you the challenges and the struggles that I face even after doing this for almost 30 years. Every single glass is different. Every single glass is going to give you a new challenge, is going to wreak havoc in your lighting in some way, shape, or form. So here's what we're fighting. When I rotated the polarizer and made a change that I liked on the front, getting those edges, it killed that highlight. So I'm going to have to find kind of a happy medium. I want to bring some of that highlight back, but the edges are going to be blowing out again. They're going to start to get gray. So we're going to introduce black cards along the edge. Now, those black cards are going to kind of come in and help give definition to the sides, but we're not going to get it in one shot because of the shape of that glass with it curving all the way down. That single card is not going to go all the way down and get that. So we may have to do it in a couple of pieces, or we may have our post-production guy go ahead and grab the edges and really bring them down, because you can do some of that in post if you're good. All right, so let's first adjust the polarizer back to a spot that I like. Yeah, you know what? That polarizer is killing So here's what's interesting. I'm moving this polarizer this amount, right? I'm barely moving it. It's just a few degrees. If I look, let me have something to point with. Chopsticks are so awesome. If I look at this area right here where that highlight's coming, it's where that curve is going back in. The polarizer is affecting that plane. It's kind of cutting that out, which means it's interrupting the highlight. The highlight is really long, but where it's coming on that little bit of curve, it's knocking that part out, and it's creating kind of a dead spot. A dead spot that I can't fix by adjusting the power. I can only fix it by adjusting my polarizer. Which, you know what, honestly, this is a great lesson, because polarizers, since they are affecting everything in the scene, play with it. Really experiment with using a polarizer. You're going to learn a lot just by rotating it and seeing what it does to your lighting on the shape of that glass. All right, Tomas, give that a pop. I think it's going to be pretty hot though now. Right?
Probably. Yeah.
Screaming?
Yeah, it's gonna go like one stop down, maybe even more.
Pop it now. I took too much out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring 3/10 back and I'm gonna feather it slightly. Go ahead.
One more?
I think I'm still polarizing a little of it.
Yeah, I think here it's...
Yep. I'm trying to split the difference, but there's no splitting it. All right, do that.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. This is really a great example of the effect of a polarizer. I barely moved that polarizer, maybe 2 degrees at most on the rotation, and it had a huge effect on the highlight where it's going on that curve before it curves back up and out. Pretty amazing. All right.
Yeah, so now we need the black cards.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely need black cards. All right, so I definitely want to knock some highlights off of those edges. I need to introduce black cards. They need to be narrow and they need to be nice and close in order to give that edges. So let's do this. Again, I got to be conscious about my set, right? It's starting to get tight. What would be the easiest thing is to bring in a couple of C-stands. Let's just bring in one C-stand with a crossbar that's nice and tight. I think it's going to have to go. Yeah, perfect. Right in front, and then let's come up high. And now we've got to get the cards. They can't clip this way. So let's put clamps.
And we can use blue goo.
Yeah. So we're going to use blue goo. Remember a photographer's best friend, blue goo? So what Tomas is doing, we're bringing in a C-stand with a C-arm, and it's short, because I don't want a full C-arm because I'm going to hit it, and then I'm going to knock over my entire set. So I've got a short one, and I'm going to use that to put 2 small pony clamps, just 1-inch pony clamps on. We're going to use blue goo, photographer's best friend, to adhere those black cards to it. We'll be able to control their distance from the edge of the glass, which means we'll be able to shape that edge just how we want it. I think those are going to be pretty far out. So are you going to glue it to just one side?
I'm going to glue it before and not close to the glass, so
okay.
I won't drop your glass.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're doing is we're bringing that card in nice and close, and it's creating a nice little edge line, which is exactly what I want. We've glued it to just one side of the clamp using blue goo, so that if we squeeze the clamp and adjust it, we're not going to knock the card off.
I have to get both closer.
All right, both closer. Pop that. I just want to see the one on the left first.
Yeah, you got it?
All right. So rather than moving both of them in, I just moved the entire thing out a little bit, which brought the one on the left closer. Now I'll bring the right one in.
You still have a bit of an edge, like white edge. It's not too much anymore. It's not a gradient anymore.
All right. Well, let me move it back slightly. Go ahead, pop it. So this is a game of inches. As you can see, I'm moving things ever so slightly. I'm being very deliberate. Honestly, this is the difference between a pro and an amateur. Paying attention to these details, working them until you're really satisfied with them. If it takes me 2 hours, all right, so it takes me 2 hours. If it takes me an entire day, personally, I don't care, because that's how I want the shot to look. I want to push this as far as I can to make sure that I accommodate every detail that I possibly can. How are we doing on that?
Yeah, we still have a small white edge on the side, the right side.
That's not bad. It's really not that bad. And it's enough where we can clean that up in post if we need to. I'm gonna put a second one on there.
Yeah, just start to falling apart.
How much life you think is still in that beer?
What?
How much life you think is still in that beer?
I can drink it.
That's not what I was talking about. All right.
Enough. Like, yeah, you see, just this hair. Yeah.
That's okay. That's just a hair. So we've brought this in really, really close. There's just a hair of that glass that we're not catching the black card with. That's okay. One, I don't want to bring it any closer. It's too tight as it is. And if I start to bring that card in closer to catch, it's missing this top edge, but that's the edge that gets narrower and it gets away from the card. If I bring that card in closer, the bulbous part down below, that card's going to start to get wider and wider. So I'm going to go ahead and I have it fixed in post. It's just a really thin line. It'll be easy for a retoucher to grab it, select it, and make it dark to match what's going on down below. So let's see how much life is still in this beer. Remember chopsticks. Chopsticks are the key to getting a good beer head. That beer looks pretty dead. I guarantee you I'm going to be able to get some life out of it. I think I'm going to be able to get a good one out of it. So,
you want me to do it?
Oh, I want you to pop it.
Okay.
I want you to pop it for sure. Okay. All right, so I'm going to kind of sneak myself in this corner. Again, I'm going to be very intentional watching where I put my feet. And I'm going to get in here and I'm going to try to stir this up and see if I can't get ahead. And you can see already how much life is still in this beer. It's been sitting here for a while we've been figuring it out. Look kind of dead. Hang on. There we go. Good. There's a lot of life left in that. There we go. All right, Tomas, are you ready? I'm just going to do one thing. I'm going to stick this in there and I'm going to pull it right back out. Now go ahead, pop it. Ooh, perfect. Okay, if we look at this shot, go back one shot. No, go back a couple more where it was kind of vortexing. All right, so you can see here, as I was stirring, even though I had pulled the chopstick out and it had been settling for a little while, I still had this kind of vortex of bubble. I don't like that. That doesn't look good. Now let's go one more. Now here, go back. Here it's almost totally dead. We let that vortex go away. All the carbonation was gone. But then it looks really flat and it doesn't have life. So all I did is I stuck the chopstick straight in. I pulled it right back out. So the head was actually still really good. It still had life to it. Go ahead and go to the next one. When I put that chopstick in and pulled it back out, I just got a little bit of carbonation coming up, and that's what I want to see personally. It feels like it's a freshly poured beer. It's got some life to it. It looks really refreshing, even though this is a dry beer. In terms of it doesn't have any of the condensation or the droplets on the front of it, it still has that appetite appeal because we've put a little bit of that carbonation back in. What do you think, Tomas?
I like it. Now we just need to work on the label. And
yeah, we need to get that label a little.
Some more light on the back.
Yeah, I want to get that a little hotter.
Yeah, that's my only concern.
I wouldn't mind thinning out that highlight a little bit. Still feels pretty fat, doesn't it? So let's bring this guy forward a little bit. So what Tomas and I are looking at, we're looking at two things. We're looking at the painted logo that's down on the glass, wanting a little bit more light on it because it's got too much of a gradient. And I'm also looking at the front edge of the beer head. I want a little bit more light to hit that. It's just looking a little bit dark to me. I'm gonna add a little bit. All right, Tomas, I'm adding 4/10 on the backlight. That might be too much, but
let me show you.
let's take a look.
It's really nice to not touch the camera.
All right. So I'm actually really quite happy with where this image is now. The only thing we want to do is make that adjustment on the front to get a little bit more light into the beer head and the logo. And then we're going to probably re-pour this a couple of times. Honestly, this is a beautiful image. This is exactly how I want my beers to look. Let's just make those final adjustments and we're there. All right, pop it for me. Let's see if we got enough light on that front. You know why this is so much deeper down here?
Because it's going down, so it's on the curve. Yeah.
And there's a lot more beer behind it than there is up here. This is a narrower part, and I think a lot of that light is coming from the backside. Let's try to bring this light down even more.
Yeah, I think it's very little because the beginning.
Let's see what that does. Hopefully it won't blow it out. Go ahead. Yeah, that's going. It's actually kind of nice to have a little bit of a gradient.
Like
Is it sharp?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, whoa, it's real sharp. There's a little bit of dusting on there. Okay. All right, last couple of things. I'm gonna hit this with a can of air. I'm seeing just a hair of dust. Go ahead and pop that. That is at least going to be a backup for the logo. Let's see if we still have some power or some life in this beer. You want to give it a whirl?
Yep.
Might be too flat though. I think it's got a little bit. So I go slow with this because you can easily overflow a beer very quickly. Ooh, that's looking pretty nice. All right, hang tight for a second. Once the vortex goes, I'm gonna drop this back in, you can pop it. Pop. Ooh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, sexy.
Oh, that's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whew, I like it. That's a perfect, that's a perfect shot in my estimation. So we actually got that in one shot. There are a couple things I want to run through that I did. This beer had actually been out there for a good amount of time, but it's got a lot of carbonation in it. And the enzymes that are in this wood, at least that's what I've been told by the photographers that I learned by, they bring out that carbonation. There was enough in that beer that I was able to really get a good amount of head to come back to life from a beer that appeared to be kind of dead.